All right, welcome everyone. Thank you all so much for coming. It's certainly great to be here tonight. My name is Marian, and I will be doing a talk on an introduction to GraphQL. But just a little bit about me. I am a front-end developer at JAMstack, where we build software applications for team sports such as soccer. And in our latest application, where we schedule referees onto games, we are working with React and GraphQL, so that kind of inspired me to give this talk today. So what is GraphQL and why would you use it? GraphQL is a query language for your data. It's a separate API specification from REST. GraphQL is kind of like a crossroads hub where particularly if you are an existing company or working with an existing code base with different APIs, internal and external, different microservices, even different like legacy databases, GraphQL is a hub that allows current and future front-end applications to get data from any type of source they need to make those applications work. And how it does this is a little thing that I would like to explain called graph theory. So graph theory is just this mathematical concept where all of your data in a system, is represented by these data points called nodes, and as well as the different relationships between each data point. So for example, in GraphQL, if you want to look at a specific information from this tweet right here, you can get tweet-specific information such as the content of the tweet and its created timestamp. But as long as it has a relationship to anything else, you can also get information such as the name of the user that posted this tweet or information about the hashtag that this tweet references. In the REST API world, that could be up to 3 different API calls. But with GraphQL, you can make that, make all 3 of these data resources and get all the results of that for one call. And that's what makes declarative data fetching arguably one of the biggest strengths of GraphQL. So what exactly would a graph like this look like when you're starting out with GraphQL? Well, it would look something like this. This is a schema. This is basically the backbone of all of your data types and models that your applications will use. So in this example for a Star Wars API, we have a human type that has a human-specific characteristic of name. And in these other fields, we also show the relationship between human and episode, meaning a human can appear in more than one episode, and human and starships. And in this example, a human can have more than one starship. So now we're going to go make a comparison between a REST call and payload versus a GraphQL call and payload using GitHub's API, which has both REST and GraphQL versions. So in my first use case, we're going to be doing a read operation in GraphQL. This is known as a query. And we're just going to list out the names of my first 5 repositories. So this is a typical REST call made using curl. And this is the result. This is part of the payload. And notice how there's just a bunch of information that's not necessarily the name. I mean, all you want is this, but there's all this other stuff here that we as developers, especially front-end developers, we have to take that large payload and condense it into something that can be usable or can be consumable, which, honestly, I'd rather much deal with a smaller payload, but, And here's an example of a GraphQL call. So here we specify what resources we're trying to get, as well as you can just provide specific arguments to filter how many results you want to get, depending on your configuration of your GraphQL API. And in the inner most brackets for your query are usually the names of the fields that you want to retrieve from your payload. So in this case, the only thing we specified in here is name, so therefore that is the only thing we would want to retrieve in our payload. And this is our result. Nicer. You can actually see all 5 names in this screenshot. So to me, that's a much smaller payload, and you can use this directly in your front-end app. All right, so now we're going to take a look at a second use case where we work with a create operation, or in GraphQL, anything with create, update, or delete is known as mutation. So we're going to take a look at both of those in their respective API specifications as well. So here is a REST call for a post request to GitHub, and here's the existing REST results. Again, lots of information. We don't really care too much about all this stuff except 1, did it work? And 2, if we need it, what is our resulting payload? So now let's take a look at the GraphQL call. Again, it's similar to the query, where the innermost fields specify what information we want to get once the mutation has been executed successfully. And here we have a much smaller payload for this. Again, we just have the name of our created project, and this name would appear if the mutation has executed successfully. All right, so how do I use queries and mutations? The syntax is, kind of weird. It was weird to me when I first started out with it, but how can I use them? So every project with GraphQL installed, even regardless of the language, has this little thing called the GraphQL playground. It's similar to Postman when you use REST. To the left, you have your query that you want to use. In the center, you have all your resulting data. To the far right is actually an auto-generated documentation of everything in your schema, from your data types to your queries and to your mutations. And here's where you can set query variables and HTTP headers if your data needs that. These are some of the other ways to call GraphQL API. You can use regular, like fetch and Axios, or you can use specific GraphQL packages directly for your app. How do I use this for front-end work? So there are some client libraries out there that can take your resulting query or mutation, give you the payload, or give you an error code if something went wrong. And it's up to you as the developer to format that as you see fit. So I think with Relay and Gatsby, they're only for React, but Apollo client, you can use the big 3, React, Angular, and Vue with GraphQL. And that's about it. Thank you. Any questions? Yeah.
Is there like a performance difference between like REST and versus GraphQL?
I mean, with the examples that I showed earlier, with REST, just as in my experience, I've had to deal with like large payloads that I get from the back end, and then I myself have to like use a map or reduce or something to get the information that I want. But with GraphQL, when you use a query, you don't need to specify all of those fields. You can just specify like name and date, and that's all you'll get for your payload. So that helps a lot in terms of performance. Do you have a question?
Is there anywhere where REST shines that GraphQL doesn't?
When I was actually doing the examples for this, I find that command line is a lot easier for REST API calls versus GraphQL. I've seen examples where someone puts in a query directly in the command line, and it doesn't, to me, it doesn't look that great. So that's one area. Oh yeah.
Do you see a difference in GraphQL performance with a SQL database versus maybe a Mongo or another non-relational type of database? Or do you have a preference, rather?
So our application now uses a mix of Mongo databases, as well as we have one legacy database that I think is under Firefox. I'm not quite sure about that, but it definitely uses SQL. I don't really notice a difference between either of the two approaches. So it works for either or, whether you have a SQL or no SQL database.
Is it right to say that GraphQL is a layer on top? It's not really the storage media, it's kind of a layer between?
Yes.
That?
Yes.
I got a question related to that. So I had used something called Prisma a while back for some tutorial, and I think it was a West Boss course, and it's like generates stuff from your database schema and generates some of the GraphQL types of stuff. I didn't fully understand what was happening as I was working with it, and I haven't come back to it at the time. But have you worked with some of these things that can generate stuff from your database and generate some the resolvers and the types and all that stuff?
I actually was taking that West Boss tutorial.
The advanced React course.
Yeah. Well, for our application specifically, we usually have services where we write JavaScript code to manipulate the Mongo database directly. So depending on what the application calls, either a query or mutation, we have a service file that says, okay, take all this information that the user wants and then execute the necessary functions in MongoDB to get the information back that the user wants. So.
Yeah, because I think what Prisma was doing was it was generating some of the filtering and paging stuff for you, so you wouldn't have to write some of that to then make those calls. I think that's what. Was anybody else? Yeah, you're kind of nodding your head.
Yeah, I think so too. I've done something similar with the way being able to do the filters and sorts in Gatsby in there too, in the GraphQL calls there. I think that's the taking care of some of those filters.
Yeah, that must be what it was. You give it a database. I think it only worked with Postgres and maybe one other one, and then it would generate some of that stuff for you. But I don't know. I ran some command line tool.
Yeah, well, if you decide not to use Prisma, unfortunately, you kind of have to do pagination and filtering and all of that yourself in the resolvers.
Sure. But that's just the same as writing a REST endpoint, right?
Yeah.
You have to do that. So, okay.
Yeah.
I was wondering, do you have preferred libraries for the back end and the front end to help implement the GraphQL?
I know that, GraphQL is basically in every language, so it kind of just depends on what you're working with. If you want to implement it with GraphQL for a specific tech stack. I think GraphQL JS is actually supported by the people who created GraphQL, but I'm not too sure of other languages.
I know with Node, Yoga comes up a lot, I think it is the server, and then Apollo Client seems to be the popular one for React.
Yeah, the front end line.
Yeah.
Anyone on the phone? Okay, well, I think that's it.